Hey everyone, it's me, Andy from the Commander's Brew. You know us, we're out here brewing wacky, wild new decks, having a few laughs while we do it. This week, we're dealing with Osgir the Reconstructor. It's the Lorehold figurehead commander from C21. Check it out. All right, we are talking Osgir the Reconstructor from Commander 2021. It's we're back on that Lorehold train because I just can't get off of it. Honestly, Lorehold has given me life right now. I am loving Red White's new thing that they're doing, dealing with artifacts, dealing with graveyards. You know, they got a lot of cool new stuff going on, and I can't get enough of it. So yeah, we did Alibu 2 shows ago. And this, Osgir is the one on the front of the same deck, but quite a different spin on it. That's the great thing, and the other great thing about these new Lorehold commanders from C21 is that they're pretty different. Like, just truly two very different decks here. So let's start talking about it. Osgir the Reconstructor, 2 red, white, legendary giant artificer, 4/4 with vigilance. Very cool. Very underrated ability in Commander. Pay 1 generic to sack an artifact, and target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So that's kind of more in the classic like Boros vein of things, and just that it's like a plus to power, so it's like good for attacking. But the sacrificing an artifact part is really good. There's a moth flying around my head. Okay. And then the better part of it is it has X tap, exile an artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card. Activate only as a sorcery. Man, this is it, right? This is the thing. You're getting double the value when you essentially cast an artifact again from your graveyard with Osgir. Now you get tokens, of course. You do get 2 of them, and then the thing is exiled. But man, that's really good. And your brain, like right when I think a lot of us saw this card, our brains are just going, what are we not supposed to have 2 of? Stuff like that. Like, hey, what are we not supposed to have more than 1 of in our deck? Well, essentially, this kind of doubles up a lot of those artifacts. And that's where a lot of the power from this deck comes from. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's before we get into it, what we're doing here, obviously, we're getting a lot of value off of this ability. Boros has a little bit of a mill thing going on in Strixhaven, which is kind of funny and weird, and something that we will be using. And then we got that little, again, what 2 cards aren't supposed to be in here, what sort of combo elements can we kind of figure out? These are the things we're working with. So let's set up the scene here. Sean, why don't you take these first 2, just some real nice ways for us to really abuse casting artifacts, really.
Love these 2. Foundry Inspector, 3 generic, 3/2 artifact creature construct. Artifact spells cost you 1 less to cast. Similarly, Semblance Anvil, 3 generic for an artifact. This one imprints so that when it enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-land card from your hand. We're hoping to hit an artifact creature. That's ideal. Because spells you cast that share a card type with the exiled card cost 2 less to cast. So if we hit an artifact creature, that means all our creatures and all our artifacts cost 2 less. But I'm happy to get an artifact in this deck if that's all I have.
Absolutely. Artifact, totally fine. Artifact creature is definitely what you're aiming for. Anything else, I probably wouldn't bother. I wouldn't worry about sorceries and instants, things like that. But you certainly can if it makes sense for you. Semblance Anvil is a card that I think I saw for the first time when on our Battle of the Brews episode where Mondo was here and he played in his artifact deck, and I was just like, what is this card? Like, it gives you that big of a discount on like creatures and artifacts if it's an artifact creature under there. Yeah, incredible card. Kind of surprised it's not in more decks, to be honest with you. Kind of surprised. Happy it's not, because it's an affordable card. So yeah, that's going to be very important for us. Like I said, milling is going to be great. So something like Milliken, which is a bit of a classic, 2 mana 0/1. You can tap, put the top card of your library into your graveyard, basically mill a card, and you add a colorless mana. And then Faithless Looting is another classic red way to get some cards in our graveyard. Single red for the draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, and that'll flashback for 2 in a red. Filling up the graveyard, essential in this deck. I actually kind of tried to do this another way. Didn't really work out. Milling and like kind of this kind of Faithless Looting style of getting things going. That's how we want to be doing it. We don't want to be messing with like discard or anything like that. Just want to fill up that graveyard. Yeah. And then finally, Sean, we got a couple of real nice, like little like cantripy style artifacts that are going to come in handy later on when we get into the neat moves. But I just wanted to kind of have them be known because they kind of serve another purpose as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in some stuff that's cheap that Osgir can get back. Utility artifacts, get 2 of them maybe. Start like Implement of Combustion's perfect. It's a single mana artifact. But then for red, you can sack it to do 1 damage to a target player. And when it's put in the graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. Osgir will bring 2 of these back eventually. We can draw 2 more cards with it that way. That's pretty decent. I like that.
Yeah, the implements are specifically strong because they work really well with Osgir's ability to boost himself or one of the other creatures we have, because like they don't need to be sacrificed by their own ability. Anything can sacrifice this to draw the card. And so, yeah, they're kind of in here as a little bit of card draw. We can kind of recur them a little bit, get that going, double them up with Osgir if we need to. But yeah, they serve multiple different purposes in this deck, as we will see. So yeah, that's kind of what we want to get going. We want to get our milling going. Obviously, we want to get that graveyard nice and full, and we want to have these artifacts be as cheap as we can get them, because we've got a couple of neat moves.
Working on a
neat moves. We're just going to take a second to handle a little bit of business. And the main point is, thanks for watching. If you want to see more of our comedic takes and offbeat decks, consider subscribing to our channel and hitting that bell to make sure you don't miss anything. And if you're loving our stuff and want to support further, the best way is to head over to patreon.com/commandersbrew. Find out how our generous patrons keep our show growing and how you can get in on the brewing action too through our Discord. Or, if you'd rather, just hang out and play some games with like-minded Commander players. Now, let's get back to those any-to-me moves.
Well, so as you can imagine, this is a powerful commander with a powerful ability. There's a lot of really cool, neat moves in this deck, so we'll try to go through these as quickly as we can. We don't want to bog it down too much, but these are some pretty cool moves here. So, artifacts known for their shenanigans. Sean, why don't you take the first 2 and see if you can piece this one together?
Oh, I think I can. Sculpting Steel, 3 for an artifact. You may have it enter as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. I mean, maybe I'll make it a copy of Spine of Ishsa. 7 generic for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. And when it's put into the graveyard, when it dies... Yeah, I guess artifacts don't die. So like the oracles, when it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. If Osgir exiles it, we won't get to do that, but we'll get 2 more entering. But like, what if Sculpting Steel came as like another one, and then we can bring Sculpting Steel out of the graveyard as a double and make 2 more Spine of Ishsa's. That's super fun.
It basically, if you can get something like a Semblance Anvil and a Foundry Inspector, or even 2 of the Semblance Anvils, 2 of the Foundry Inspectors, these things are not hard to get going. It's like if you hit one of your artifact, I was gonna say cheapeners. Is that a word? No. You know what I mean, though, right? The that are going to lessen that mana cost. You have 2 of them. Because then you can sacrifice it and bring it back with Osgir, and all of a sudden now all of our artifacts are actually lessened by twice that. If we can get it so that it's the 3 is free for Sculpting Steel, and you have Spine of Ishsa on the board. First of all, it's just good because Sculpting Steel can become anything. But Spine of Ishsa gets crazy because that means we can sacrifice the Sculpting Steel with Osgir, or if we have a free sack outlet, it's just free. And then we can cast it for free because it bounces back to our hand because it's a copy of Spine of Ishsa. You can just destroy all the permanents on the battlefield if you get this going. That is a combo.
So make an artifacts 3 cheaper. Spine of Ishsa's out. Sculpting Steel infinity times and sack it. I mean, that's quite a few cards, so good on you for doing it. But You've cleansed the board.
You're just happy, really, to get the Sculpting Steel and the Spine of Ishtar together. The other things kind of, they fall into place. They'll be great, but otherwise it's still good. We also have in here Coveted Jewel, the 6 mana mana rock. It's when it enters, you draw 3 cards. You can tap it to add 3 mana of any one color. But whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attack you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel. Untap it. So this is obviously a major downside. We don't ever want to let our opponents draw 3 cards, but this is going to make them come for us. So if we have, Osgir as a sack outlet for artifacts, or something like Greater Gargadon, which works really well with that previous thing as well, the 9 and a red beast, the 9/7, however, suspending it for a single red, and it has the ability of sacrifice an artifact, creature, or land. You remove a time counter from it, and you can activate that only if it's suspended. So you suspend the Gargadon, you've got like 9 or 10 times that you can sack things for free before it pops into play. You get this free 9/7 essentially. It just gets wild. They want to come for us for our Coveted Jewel. Guess what? Sacrificed. Guess what?
Gone.
Made 2 more with Osgear on our next turn. Drew 6 cards. Made 6 mana back again. You know what I mean? Like, you're just laughing. And then same thing. Sacrifice them because if someone wants to come for us, they're not going to get them.
If I can't play with my Coveted Jewel, nobody can.
Exactly. This next pair is really fun because one way you kind of have to do it this way. So check it out.
So Perpetual Timepiece is a 2-mana artifact that has 2 abilities. You can tap to put the top 2 cards of your library in your graveyard. Self-mill. Decks that want that love this card. But also 2, exile Perpetual Timepiece. Shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library. Not bad. Sometimes you want that. But then also Ugin's Nexus. 5 generic for a legendary artifact. If a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. Also, if Ugin's Nexus would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile it and take an extra turn after this one. It's a legendary artifact. So if we Sculpting Steel it, we have to pick one to stay. So the Sculpting Steel will be the one that we send to the graveyard. Oh boy, but the other one's still on the battlefield, so it'll prevent us from taking that extra turn.
That's true. So what you would have to do instead is if you mill it into your yard, you can bring it back with Osgear, get your turn that way because you can still sacrifice. You can sacrifice them both, or I guess one would stop the one, but you'd still get the one. But also, just the fact that we can sacrifice artifacts mean that this is just an extra turn card that red-white is getting, right? So even just playing it, but milling it into our yard does the same thing, right? So we get this kind of basically a blue card in our red-white deck, and it works really well with our whole thing that we got going on.
I like it.
We also have... Oh, yeah, okay. These are 2 cards that work really well together. We got Rings of Bright Hearth here. 3 mana for an artifact. Whenever you activate an ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you can pay 2. If you do copy that ability, you can choose new targets for the copy. Do that with Osgear for any number of his things, specifically, obviously, making a bunch of tokens. That's essentially a token doubler for you. Same thing with Lithoform Engine. 4 mana, legendary artifact, pay 2, tap it, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You can choose your target, so that's the one we'll be using most often. 3, tap it, you can copy target instant or sorcery spell. Probably not going to do that one too often. But there's also 4 and tap it, copy target permanent spell you control. So you can get it on the front end. We can make 2 copies of something really good for an extra 4. It's a lot of mana, but maybe you played this for 1 mana because of our artifact mana reducers, and then on its way out, you can use, or when it's coming back in, rather, you can use the 2 mana to copy Osgear's ability. So you can end up with a lot of tokens of these artifacts kicking around your board, and they can be really powerful in multiples. This was an excellent suggestion from the Discord, Sean. Read this card.
Ooh, Fires of Invention. I'm intrigued. 3 and a red for an enchantment. You can cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn. You may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana costs. So we're restricted to 2 spells, but we can do infinity with those 2 spells.
So what I remember the cards I just read, right? Lithoform Engine, Rings of Bright Hearth, talking about Osgir's abilities and all this sort of thing. Those are activated abilities that cost quite a bit. Like one of the things on Lithoform Engine costs 4, it's 2, it's 2 for each time for Osgir to copy it and so on. So if you're doing that, that's where you want your mana to be going, but you still want to be casting and putting things on the board from your hand. Well, that's where Fires of Invention comes into play, right? Mm-hmm. We can be casting big artifacts. Like if we have what, like 9 lands, we can still be casting 2 huge artifacts on our turn, plus using all that mana for activated abilities. When I saw it, I was like, this is brilliant. This is actually going to work really well. We don't particularly have a ton of stuff we want to do at instant speed. So like I think it's a total, like you're happy to make that trade-off when you get this card in your hand.
Yeah.
One quick combo that was pointed out also, Cogwork Assembler, 3 mana 2/3, which it's an artifact creature. It has an ability pay 7. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. And then a card I've always wanted to figure out how to play in Commander, and we finally did it. It's Power Stone Shard. 3 mana for an artifact that taps to make a colorless mana for each artifact you control named Power Stone Shard. So the way this works with Cogwork Assembler is you make a number of Power Stone Shards. So like we can make 2 with Osgir. Let's just say you made 2. Like you can get some other ones as well, obviously, like I just mentioned. But that's the kind of floors to make 2. You get 2, then they each tap for 2. So you're making 4. Pay a little mana with that Cogwork Assembler. Get another one. Now that taps for 3. If you can do that on an end step, now you've got 3. Now you untap with 3 Power Stone Shards. Because it's to the next end step that they go away. Yeah. And they each tap for 3. Well, then we can start making... if we can get it to where we've made enough copies of the Power Stone Shards that they create 7 or more mana, you have infinite mana.
Yeah.
Because you make one, it taps for 8 now, boom, and it keeps making copies and so on and so forth. So that's a fun thing to try to get working. But either card is just kind of cool on its own, right? 7 mana to make a copy, admittedly is not the best deal out there. But Power Stone Shard is good. I had it in a game, in one of the test games, where I just made 2 copies of it, and just having 2 Worn Power Stones was totally great. Like that was excellent.
I also love this as an option to just be like, I'll make another Spine of Ishsaw. I'll just do that. Like that's fair.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to do that.
And we do, like, Zerda's in the deck, so we can lower the activated ability cost there a little bit, so that's fine too. All right, now Sean, this is the one where you're going to take us on this journey.
Okay.
And I'll pipe in when I need to point something out, but take us on this long journey here.
So Karn, the Great Creator, is from War of the Spark. This is a 4 mana planeswalker, legendary planeswalker Karn. 5 loyalty. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponents control can't be activated. Mean.
It's mean. Listen, that's
it doesn't say
that's the downside
abilities.
of the card. That honestly, I wish that wasn't on the card. We don't need that.
Okay.
But anyways, keep going.
+1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness equal to its mana value. We see this effect a lot, like artifacts becoming creatures. Also, -2, you may reveal an artifact card you own from outside the game, or choose a face-up artifact card you own in exile. Put that card into your hand. That one's usable.
Yeah.
Because we exile things, right? Like
exactly.
Osgir exiles things a lot.
So yeah,
another card.
That's a nice little ability there. Get back something from exile.
So this is Toymaker. 2 generic for an artifact creature, Spell Shaper, 1/1. They've got an ability 1 and tap, discard a card, target non-creature artifact, becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness each equal to its mana value until end of turn.
Okay.
This is Karn's ability on legs.
Right. Now, take a look at this next card.
Ooh, I love this one. Aetherflux Reservoir, 4 generic artifact. This is the Storm Kill. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain a life for each spell you've cast this turn. We talked about casting Sculpting Steel as infinite Spines of Ishsaw. If it wasn't enough to just decimate everyone's board, we can also get infinite life that way, almost infinite, and then, well, we could, and then 50
and then
everybody. Because we can pay 50 life to do 50 to a creature or player.
Yeah.
Still have yet to see someone do that to a creature.
That's true. I've never seen it. No, I have not seen
And
that.
Rune of Sustenance, one in a white.
Yeah.
It's an aura rune and enchants a permanent. Any permanent. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Oh, I get it. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it has lifelink. And if it's a permanent is an equipment, it has equipped creature has lifelink. No, I don't. Oh, because we can make Aetherflux Reservoir a creature. Rune of Sustenance is always allowed to enchant Aetherflux Reservoir, but it doesn't do anything unless it's a creature. But we make it a creature with Karn or Toymaker, and then if we can 50 anybody, we get the 50 back, and we'll just 50 the whole table.
That's right, exactly. That's exactly it. So if you can sneakily get up to 50 or past 50, and get Aetherflux Reservoir and Root of Sustenance and either of those two things, you're looking pretty good. Here's the great thing, though. Aetherflux Reservoir works really well on its own because we got those little cantripy guys, those little 1 mana and sometimes even free artifacts that we have in this deck that we're going to be able to cast out a lot of the times. And we have a lot of stuff like Trading Post, things like that we're not always Osgearing stuff. We're not always exiling stuff from our graveyard. We can definitely bring some things back from the graveyard, pop it up to our hand, play it out, get a couple. When you get 2 Aetherflux Reservoirs, I had it several times in my testing games because we've got a couple cards that can go get it, put it in our graveyard, blah, 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 milling, whatever. Getting 2 of them is not hard at all to do.
I am shocked they didn't make it legendary.
Right? So you pay you can even just cast the first one. Someone might destroy it. Great. Now I got 2 of them.
Great.
And it's even easier. And if you can get this crazy thing where you make it a creature and then we put on a Rune of Sustenance, or Crystalline Giant is also in here. 3 mana for the 3/3. It's an artifact giant. This is the one from Ikoria where at the beginning of combat, on your turn, you choose a kind of counter at random. And that Crystalline Giant doesn't have on it, and whatever. It's like there's a million different ones you can get.
Nightmare in real life.
This one, it was a little bit of a. I had a choice. Anyways, I'll explain in a second. So it gets a bunch of cool counters. Then you've got Nesting Grounds, which is a land. It taps to add colorless. You pay 1 and tap it. Move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent. Activate this ability only anytime you would cast a sorcery. So if we get a lifelink counter on Crystalline Giant and we have Nesting Grounds, you can just move that lifelink counter on to Aetherflux Reservoir. It doesn't even need to be a creature to have lifelink.
Wow. That's an achievement unlocked.
Right? Like it's again, so here was the debate for me personally. There's a couple other creatures, but there's one of them that like you could cycle it. You pay 1 and a white to cycle it to put a lifelink counter on something. It was either that or Crystalline Giant, or maybe both. I didn't know how heavy I wanted to go on this pretty out there combo. Do you know what I mean? Like I wasn't sure. So I thought like Crystalline Giant is still a good creature just on its own. I'm happy to have 2 of these guys if I can get it with Osgir or whatever. So I think just including that, having Nesting Grounds in the deck as a colorless land is fine as well. You're not giving up a lot there. And who knows, maybe Magical Christmas Land treats us well and we can we can make it happen. There it is. So we've got this kind of, value oriented graveyard deck on the surface. And then, once, if the game goes a little long, we start seeing a lot of our deck. We can pull out some pretty wild things, which is a lot of fun.
I'm a fan. I want to see it happen.
I know, me too. I've got the lore hold bug. I might put this one together and try and make it work. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's the whole thing. That is the deck. A lot of fun to play. A lot of cool, neat moves. I got to give major shout outs to our Discord helpers. As you're going to see, check it out in Lost Cards, but there's some other angles we didn't go down as we always do. But I wanted to give a big shout out to our Bunk Steak, Lol What, Micah Eternity's Crafter, Nosrak 2, Demir Buffalo, Chiefy, Brave Sir Robin, Knuckle Booper, T-Coats, Mad as Men. There was a ton of people in there. If I miss you, I'm sorry. Special shout outs to I haven't seen them post in the Discord before, really. I can't remember anyways. But Slothbear55 came in with some great additions to this deck, including, I think, the whole Aetherflux Reservoir thing at the end. And it was blew my mind. Really had some hot additions. There was also a cool little Pirates angle we took at the end, which we kind of included as a finisher, as a different finisher. Very cool stuff. Check out this deck tech. Over on TCG. It's a lot of fun. Put this one together and have a play of it, I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, we did the Discord helper thanks, so let's talk about the budget report. I was pleasantly surprised that this one came in just around $100, $110, $107, whatever it was, wherever you want to look. You can get the low for between 60 and 70, again, depending on what you're doing there, what cards, which printing of the cards you pick. So that's not bad, because I think this deck is pretty good. Some of the stuff that's more expensive though, starting with Karn, the Great Creator. This card is these cards are all sub 20. They're this one's I think $16 or $18 or something like that. As much as I love it, you could cut it. It's kind of, I really don't like that static ability on it. I really don't like the fact that it turns
off all your opponent's mana rocks.
And people are going to come for it, you know what I mean? So that's why it's, I don't love it. I truly don't. I do love the other two abilities, though. They're so good and they work really well with our fun, weird thing that we got going on. But you can cut it. You have my permission.
You got an Aetherflux Reservoir. That's 15 to $20.
Yep. And Lithoform Engine is up there around 12 as well. I think something like that.
Yeah.
I think Lithoform Engine is going to be one of those cards. It's a mythic. It's an artifact. It doesn't necessarily go in every deck or anything, but it's going to be one of these cards that gets over $20. There's no question about it. So if you don't have one yet, I would suggest grabbing one. Some pricey cards we didn't run because of budget purposes. Number one, Anointed Procession, obviously.
Oh, goodness.
Very good in this deck. Wormcoil Engine is just an all-star in this as well. You just get numerous tokens. And then this is a wild one, Sean.
Crucible of Worlds.
Yeah.
Playing lands from the graveyard. That one is, that one's over $40 again.
Again, I know. And
Core set.
Unbelievable stuff. But it's obviously pricey. Didn't run it, but really good at this deck. Boros getting Crucible of Worlds and actually having it be good. This is a card I only ever see in green decks, but it's actually good in I say Boros, I should say. I think I'm done saying Boros. I think I'm all about Lorehold these days.
Yeah.
Lorehold loves Crucible of Worlds, especially this deck. But yeah, there it is. That's the deck. If you want to go and you want to put a little extra money in, you can really make Anointed Procession and Wormcoil Engine alone kind of make this deck, even more powerful than this version. But yeah,
big time.
A lot of fun. Loving these precons. I gotta say, at first I kind of felt like I was a little underwhelmed by them, but no longer. I like them a lot. I think they're a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Well, again, check out the Lost Cards that's going to be coming out. We'll talk about some other angles coming out in a couple days. Otherwise, we'll be back here next week with another deck tech. Check us out.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you love what we're doing, consider supporting the show by going to patreon.com/commandersbrew.
And if you want to get any of the cards from our deck list, go to our TCG Player affiliate link below.
That helps us out too. And for a free way to help us out, consider sharing the show with some friends. Like and subscribe, add a comment or two.
See you later.
Bye.